Happy Saturday, music makers. My name's Leon Harrell. Welcome to Intune. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about how to learn music theory at the keyboard. So how to apply that at the keyboard. If it's your first time joining us, welcome, and say hello in the comments. Let me know your name, where you're located, and what instrument you play. We have people join us from all around the world every week, so it's nice to know where you're at and what instruments you play. Let's see, this morning in the chat window already, I see David. Good morning, David. And I see Dawn King. Good morning. And, from Illinois. I'm from Illinois. I'm right here in Champaign. So we're going to jump into it today. We're going to be using a tool called Piano Marvel, which is a tool we talk about every week on this show. So if you haven't already, you can download a 30-day free trial of Piano Marvel at my website, 1minutemusiclesson.com/toolbox. And if you decide to continue on, it is a subscription product. If you decide to use that, make sure you use our promo code 1minute at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your monthly subscription on an ongoing basis. So we're going to jump right into it this morning. And I've already loaded up Piano Marvel. And in Piano Marvel, they have a method cabinet and a technique cabinet. So this is sort of the teaching material within Piano Marvel, in addition to all the other resources for that. So we're going to look at the method cabinet this morning. In particular, we're going to look at level 3A, which is where you start to get into the meat of the music theory. But they start to introduce music theory all throughout the method cabinet. So right from lesson 1, you're starting to learn information about rhythm, about pitch, chords, scales, intervals, all these different types of things, and especially how to read music. That's the main focus of using Piano Marvel. So we're going to look at level 3A, and I like to point this out to people because it's not always obvious. The method books, the teaching material that comes in Piano Marvel, is available as a PDF link that you click on right here. Okay, I see a couple more folks joining. Good morning, Gerald. Good morning, Henry. Welcome. The method book, you'll see it right here under my face here on YouTube. I'm going to be scrolling through talking about some different things. But the thing I like to point out to you is that you can see at a glance, well, what am I going to learn in, level 3 of Piano Marvel or any particular level? Open up the method book, take a look at the table of contents, and it's got a really nice layout just giving you a quick overview. So in level 3, and some things we'll talk about this morning, the C major scale, how to construct that. The interval of a sixth, what is that interval? Why is that interval important at this point in your development? The concept of swing tempo, the 4 chord, talking about Roman numerals and functions of chords. Continuing on, they'll talk a little bit about, transforming from a major scale or major key to a minor key. Different hand positions, which applies primarily, to piano. Getting into utilizing the pedal, so altering like the color of sound. All right, the module finishes up with talking a little bit about the chords 1 and 5, so the tonic to the dominant, and talking a little bit more about the 4 chord and what that's useful for. And then they wrap up with just an introduction into 12-bar blues form. So lots of theory concepts as well as key changes. So lots of theory concepts in Module 3 or Method 3 of Piano Marvel, but we're going to just take a look and sort of casually go through what we can this morning for this hour. So I'm going to jump into Lesson 1, which is the C major scale, and I'll open that up here in the method book as well. All right, and what I like about Piano Marvel's method especially is that it's very concise. This is great for adult learners because they're sort of getting right to the point. There's not a lot of extra fluff in there. So you'll see within the method lesson for C major scale, they're pointing out a couple key concepts so that the smallest interval or the smallest distance between notes on the piano is called a half step, and it's the same on other instruments as well. And you can see that here on my keyboard. If we're just measuring, when we're talking about distances between notes, if we're measuring from one key to the next key, I'm looking at the top of the piano keyboard. It's easier to see that. If you look at the bottom of the keyboard, it's very easy to sort of mistakenly think of that as the distance between the white key to the next white key, like C to D. But when we're talking about measuring things in half steps, or half steps or whole steps, we want to measure from the top of the keyboard. So from C to C sharp, that's a half step, and you can hear the sound of that. Let's see, I'm just going to do a quick sound check, make sure that that sound is loud enough for you. Do let me know in the comments if that is too quiet. There's the sound of it one more time. So the other thing they're showing us is the distance of a whole step. So a whole step is 2 half steps. You just add the 2 half steps together. So from C to C sharp to D, altogether that's 2 half steps. So C to C sharp is 1 half step, C sharp to D is another half step. So knowing the difference between a whole step and a half step, that's crucial to understanding how to build the formula for the C major scale and other scales. Other scales use these combinations of half steps and whole steps. Once in a while you'll have an augmented third in a scale. So looking at the method book here, they show us the formula is 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. And there's kind of a visual reminder of that baked into the keyboard if you're not aware. You can see sort of that the pattern, the concept of the pattern in the 2 black keys, and then there's a space which represents the half step, 3 black keys which represent the whole steps, and then a space for the half step, and then you start to repeat the pattern. So it's just sort of visually baked into the keyboard. But when we're talking about that specifically for C major, we're going to start on C, and then we're going to walk through the pattern. So from C, up the first whole step is D, up the next whole step is E, up the half step is F, continuing on, a whole step to G, whole step to A, whole step to B, and then our final half step loops us back around to C. All right, so any scale, we start on a particular note, we go through its pattern of half steps and whole steps or whatever intervals it may be, and then we land on that same note an octave above. Okay, Piano Marvel is going to continue on to talk about, in particular, how would you play this scale on the piano? And if you're new to the keyboard, or say you play another instrument, it's always just nice to know a little bit of piano, because I think that makes learning music theory more easy and more accessible. So many concepts in music theory really align very nicely to the piano keyboard, because the piano keyboard is in alignment with the way that music notation and music theory are written. That's not always the case with other instruments. Fretted instruments in particular can be more challenging to connect the dots on some of these things on stringed instruments. So let's just take a quick look. In our method book, they're just showing us, what particular fingers play the notes. On the right hand, the thumb, finger number 1. You always, your thumb is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the rest of the fingers. Same thing on the left hand. The thumb is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the rest of them. So in the right hand, we're starting on the thumb, playing 1, 2, 3. And then our method book is telling us cross the thumb under to play the F, and then continue on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your pinky at the top, coming back down, and then cross your third finger over your middle finger to E, D, and C. All right, they show us the left hand pattern, starting on 5 in the left hand, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cross finger 3 over, coming back down, cross the thumb under. All right, so very concise instruction in the method book. And then we have the accompanying exercise right here in Piano Marvel. Other features you may be unaware of in this software in particular, some reasons I like it. Every lesson in the method cabinet, at least in the first 3 to 4 levels, I think it is, it comes with its own lesson video. So you could watch a video that sort of walks you through what I just talked about, which tells you some information from the method book, some information about the music you see on the screen, maybe how to play through the exercise, something like that. But this morning, I'm going to go ahead and click the Prepare button. The Prepare button is one of 2 modes in Piano Marvel where Piano Marvel is listening to what am I playing and how am I playing it. In Prepare mode, it's listening, am I playing the correct notes? So I'm going to go ahead and do that to make sure my keyboard's connected. right, but it's not capturing the timing of what I'm doing, the rhythm. So right now it's still listening for am I playing the correct notes, but it's not evaluating my rhythm. So I'm going to go ahead and play that in the left hand. All right, and it'll go through and tally up a score to sort of determine how accurately did I play that. I didn't miss any notes. There were no red notes, as they call them. It's going to tally how long did it take me to do it. It knows that there's a target time of about 18 seconds to play through that. So if it takes me much longer than that, it's just going to deduct some of that from the score just to get a feel for it. Okay, it's taking you too long, but it's not really testing or assessing your rhythmic reading there. Okay, if I wanted to do that, I would do that in assessment mode, but we're not going to talk about that this morning. Okay, so when it comes to music theory, there's so many concepts in theory that you'll eventually want to learn as a musician, and you'll want to apply them. But what I like about Piano Marvel is that it's going to introduce them in a very orderly and sort of step-by-step fashion, and then it's going to apply them right in the piece that you're learning. So I'll go ahead and close out of the C major scale and move on to the next lesson, which is the interval of the sixth. And you'll see that here in the method book. It's going to introduce the interval of a sixth. And in some previous lessons, they had already introduced us to what is an interval, which is just the distance between two notes. And there's two ways to measure intervals if you're not aware. There's the generic interval, which is the distance between the two letter names of two notes. So for example, our first two pitches in this short excerpt here are C and G. I like that you can click on them in Piano Marvel and it'll just tell you the name of the note and where it is on the keyboard. But we're just measuring the distance between C to G. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The generic interval between these two pitches is called a fifth. All right. Now you may have heard of terms like perfect fifth, augmented fifth, diminished fifth. So when we're talking about adding a quality to it, like perfect, major, minor, these extra words that describe the interval, then we're getting into specific intervals. And then we have to also measure the half steps to know that type of information. But we're not quite there in the curriculum of Piano Marvel yet. So right now they're just introducing what's the generic interval. Okay, so when you're counting generic intervals, you'll always want to start with the number 1 on the first note of the interval. So in this case, from C to G, we'll start by counting 1 on the C, 2 on the D, 3 on the E, 4 on the F, 5 on the G. So that will form a fifth. So in this lesson, they're introducing us to the sixth because they had already taught us the fifth in a previous lesson. So likewise, a sixth from B to G. All right, that's the interval of a sixth. Well, why are they introducing this one to us so soon? Well, they're building up to teaching you the concepts of functional harmony in music. So what I mean by that is every chord that we play provides some type of function in music, and those functions are called tonic, meaning that we're resting. It's a resting place, the tonic. They might be a dominant chord because they are leading us back home. They're pushing us back to that tonic, that home or resting place. All right, so the tonic and the dominant are the two most important functions. But there's a third function called the predominant. So the predominant is setting us up to lead into the dominant very smoothly. So if we gave those numbers, so we number chords in music, and those numbers are generally listed as Roman numerals so that we can tell this distinction between a chord, we use Roman numerals, or if we're talking about just the scale degree, what note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1 at the top, we just use Arabic numbers or traditional numbers, I guess. So when we're talking about this, they've introduced the fifth as the first interval they taught us because that aligns with the 1 chord or the tonic of C. All right, those are 2 notes from the chord C major. Now they're introducing the 6th, all right, which is an interval that is inside of that dominant chord, the G major chord, and in this case it's the first inversion. And again, they're not going to tell you all this detail right up front because they don't want to overwhelm you. All right, but that's why they're teaching us the interval of the 6th, and like the method book tells us, they are preparing us for the 5/7 chord, or that dominant 7 function. All right, so let's go ahead, let's read through this morning in prepare mode. If you have available to you, put your hands on your keyboard. If not, you can clap along the rhythm, or what I recommend you do for this lesson is say out loud what is the interval. So I'll do that this morning. So we won't quite do it in rhythm, but we'll read the intervals out. So that first interval is a 5th. The next interval, oh, sorry, play that. The next interval is a 6th. All right, and then we're coming back to playing the 5th again. All right, the same figure, these same 3 notes, or same 3 intervals are repeated. So 5th, 6th, 5th. Okay, looking in the left hand, they're repeating the same thing. 5th, 6th, 5th. And one more repetition, 5th, 6th, 5th. All right. So as we're looking at that, some extra tips to think about. So if you're new to reading music, or you're just working on developing your music reading skills, one skill that you'll ultimately want to get to is reading music by interval. And that's a lot of what Piano Marvel is teaching you over the course of time. So when you're new to reading music, you are reading by note, meaning you're looking at the note somewhere on the staff. And last week we talked all about how to read notes from the grand staff. But ultimately, you want to get to a place where you're reading by interval. So you're looking at this first interval, which is the 5th, all right, and you are assessing what is the same and what is different about the next interval. Do any of the notes stay the same? If they do stay the same, it means my hand or my finger for that note is not going to move. It's just going to repeat the note. So there's less information to process as I'm reading it. So I'm noticing that top note in every interval is a G. It's the same all the way across. So my pinky gets to play that, and it gets to just stay right there in position. But I'm noticing the intervals on the bottom between the notes, so from C to B to C, C to B to C again, there's just a small amount of motion there. It's a different type of interval when we're looking linearly than when we're looking vertically. Right now we're just talking about the interval between the top and bottom notes, okay? All right, so moving along in our method cabinet, they've introduced us to the C major scale, the interval of the 6th, and now they're going to put it into practice. They're going to give us a piece of music to utilize these concepts. Again, they would give us a lesson video at the top highlighting more information about the 6th, but now they're going to put it into practice. So in our method book, they give us a little bit extra instruction. Go through, clap it, and count it. Clap and name the notes in the right hand. All right, and then you can take it to Piano Marvel and go through prepare mode to practice and prepare yourself, and then do it in assessment mode to be scored to earn your trophy for that particular place in the method cabinet. So let's look through this one together this morning, and if you have questions on intervals or the C major scale, or just questions in general about music theory, throw them out in the chat window and we'll address those as we go through. But we're going to go ahead and do, this example is Skip to My Lou, a very traditional children's tune that everybody would know. I'll do this in prepare mode. I'm going to go ahead and count 2 measures as we sight read this together. So left hand in place, right hand in place on the E. 2 measures, count in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, excellent. It's gone through and it's evaluated that. Okay, so just looking at this piece a little bit longer, let's see if we can identify where is that interval of the sixth. All right, and what can we know about the scale of C major? So one thing jumps out to me right away. In the beginning of the music, there's no key signature. We don't see any sharps or flats at the beginning of the piece. So that it leaves us with two choices. Either it's C major, which in this case, that's what it is, or it could be its relative minor, meaning A minor. The relative is always going to be down a minor third from the relative major, which in this case is C major. Okay, so that's sort of our relationship to the key. The key is C major. All the notes fall into that scale. We don't see any accidentals to alter that. What about the interval of the sixth? Do we see that somewhere in the piece? And we do. We see that in measure 3 and 4 in the left hand. All right, that B to G. And then we also see that in measure 7 in the left hand. Again, that B to G. All right. So moving along in our method cabinet, more concepts start to come into play. So the next thing they'll introduce us to are 3-note chords. And like I say, they're progressively building up to various music theory concepts. So now we've got a short little video that could walk us through this. Or in our method book, they're going to show us. So here we can see that, like I mentioned, chords can be identified a couple different ways, and the most traditional way to do it is with Roman numerals. So the numbers, Roman numeral 1, which is the capital letter I, for the tonic chord, or that resting home chord in the scale, and then 5, the letter V, in Roman numerals. And in this case, we've got the 5-7, meaning that the 5 chord G major, also has the 7th added to it, the F. Okay. In this example, they're asking us to begin to recognize the difference between the shape of the 5-7 chord and the 1 chord, especially on the keyboard, and as well as in the music too. I mean, they visually look different in the music. Okay, and then they're letting us know, there'll be some additional theory studied later. The other way we can identify chords is by their letter name. We've got C major, all right, is that first chord, the tonic chord. And then we've got G7, they've listed as our second chord. So if we want to be a little more specific, G7, G, B, D, F, all right, that's your standard G7 in its root position. All right, this particular G7 is going to be in first inversion, so the root G has been moved up an octave. The third of the chord B is in the bottom, so that's what makes it first position, or first inversion, sorry. Then we have what would be a D. They've omitted that because we don't need the fifth in this case to make the chord sound sufficient to be dominant. All right, the F is the fourth of the chord. All right, and the G is that root repeated at the top. All right, and I say fourth, the fourth note, technically it's the 7th of the chord. Okay, so again, they're going to give us music to go ahead and play that outlines these concepts and aligns with them. So let's go ahead and read through that one together. We'll do it in prepare mode, hands on the keyboard, in place on C and G, and here we go, 2 measures, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and recalibrate. So we'll continue on. So that right hand, we've already played our C, and then we're on to E and C and G again, and in tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry about that. We have a little bit of lag. Every time I'm live streaming with the software, it's a little bit more powerful than my computer can handle. Okay, so looking at that 3-note chord. So they're introducing to us this concept of the bottom note, the root note, the middle note, the third, all right, and then the top note, which is the fifth. All right, so moving along here, let's close out of that example, and I'm just going to switch scenes here real quick. I'm just noticing there's a little lag in my keyboard video at the bottom. It's not showing that for some reason, but that's okay. We'll move along. So the next lesson, they're going to continue to give us more examples that utilize these concepts. So the next piece is Mary Had a Little Lamb. So in this piece, we're looking for those same chords, the C major, the 1 chord, and the 5-7 or the G7 chord in that same first inversion layout with B, F, and G. All right, so let's take a listen. And before we do that, I'm just going to try to reset this camera just so we can see if we can have that added in there. That would be very nice. I don't know if that's going to work, but here we go. Let's play through Mary Had a Little Lamb in prepare mode, same concepts, and then we'll analyze just a little bit of that. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so taking a look at that, let's see if we can identify those chords. So we've only got the 2 chords we've mentioned. All right, so in the beginning 2 measures in the left hand, we've got our tonic chord, our 1, our C major. All right, we're shifting in measure 3 to that 5-7 in first inversion. All right, and then returning back to C major. All right, then we have just a repetition of that exact same structure. C major moving into 5-7 or the dominant, back to C major. Excellent. Okay, so let's move along to the next lesson. So in the next lesson, they're talking about the interval of a sixth again, and now we're starting to look at it in its other, the other sixth that's important for the key of C major. So in this case, we've got starting on C and G, our perfect fifth there. All right, and then we're moving to the sixth from C to A. So C, D, E, F, G, A. All right, and this so happens to be 2 notes from our 4 chord, our F major chord. Okay, so they're getting ready to introduce that to us. So if we follow along in the method cabinet, or in the method book, excuse me, you'll see preparing for the 4 chord. These are 2 of the notes in that chord. So let's go ahead and do that in prepare mode together. All right, so hands on the keyboard on C and G. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to repeat it in the left hand now. Here we go. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. So we've got both types of these sixths from C major. All right, so we've got the C to the A. All right, that's outlining part of the 4 chord. And then we've also got the B to the G, which is outlining part of the 5-7 chord. All right, as you continue on in this module, they're going to give us a few more pieces to look at and go ahead and introduce us to the 4 chord, a couple songs that include that, And then they'll wrap up with some flashcards on this topic. So let's go ahead and read through a couple pieces here. Okay, let's go with lesson number 7. I'm a little teapot. Okay, so here we go. Hands on the keyboard. We'll sight read this one, and just you're paying attention to when are you playing an interval of a sixth. All right. All right, and there's 2 different types here. We're hearing the major sixth and the sound of the minor sixth. All right, but we'll get into that in future lessons. So here we go in prepare mode. Hands on the keyboard, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Okay, so again, they've included a video at the top that would walk you through this kind of thing, but let's take a moment and identify where are the intervals of a sixth in this piece. As you take a moment to look at that on the screen, I'm just going to play through the tune one more time. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so as we're scanning through this, we're looking primarily in the left hand. All right, we're seeing an interval of the sixth here in measure 2 in the bass. We're seeing that same C to A in the bass. All right, another sixth here from B to G. All right, moving through the rest of the piece, there's a sixth. All right, and then one more at the end from B to G. All right, so let's continue on. Let's see. So our next lesson is going to talk about the 4 chord. So I mentioned in music theory, we have functional harmony, meaning that the chords have different functions to them. And our 1 chord is the tonic, it's the resting. Our 5 chord is the dominant, it's pushing us back to the tonic. Our 4 chord acts as a predominant, so it's sort of setting up the dominant, making the dominant ready to move to. So here we have the 4 chord in the key of C major, just F major. All right, and they're showing it to us in its second inversion. So again, if we take our root chord F and bring it up to the top, that's our first inversion, and now we're going to take our A and bring it up an octave. All right, so that C is in the bass. All right, so that's our 4 chord in the key of C, and it happens to be in second inversion. Okay, so let's take a look at the piece they're showing us to learn that, which is just called the 4 chord. That's the name of this particular tune. Okay, and they've marked in the score for us where is that 4 chord. All right, so we can see that comes in twice in the piece. All right, and now let's play through it. So we're going to do it in prepare mode, hands on the keyboard, a little bit slower just for your beginning sight readers out there. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you're new to sight reading, don't feel pressured to play through it that quickly. You know, if I was totally brand new to sight reading, I'd probably move about that tempo for the 8th note, just so it's really easy for me to have time to process. So it might sound more like 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4, like so. Okay, so that is the 4 chord, and we're going to keep moving on so we can get through as much of this cabinet trophy level as we can. So the next tune is Lavender's Blue. All right, and here is an example where we've added in the 4 chord in that second inversion, C, F, and A. All right, and we'll sight read through that one. So here we go, hands on the keyboard. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So we've started to add in really the 3 functional chords that we need to make interesting music happen. So we've got our 1 chord, our 4 chord, our 5/7, and back to 1. All right, and if you're someone who understands a little bit more music theory than the beginning level, you may have noticed they have done this on purpose because these are the smoothest voice leading options for those 3 chords, which would come much later in learning about in music theory. Okay, moving on, we've got a couple more tunes. Twinkle Little Star, If You're Happy and You Know It, The Bear Went Over the Mountain, On Top of Old Smoky, and Sweet Lullaby. So just for sake of time, let's go ahead and look at the flashcard exercises for this. So in Piano Marvel, they include a smattering of these flashcard exercises where they'll show you some music to play or a note to play. And once you play that, it sort of flips the page to the next flashcard. So for this example, I'll click Prepare. All right, and the first note is just C, and I'll press that. All right, and then it moves to the next example. So the next example is B, and an A, and a B, a C, a D, an E, a C with the right hand, an A, a C, a B, a D with the right hand, or sorry, the left hand, middle C, E, D, B in the right hand, A, middle C, A, D in the left, E, C, E, etc. So it goes through that. So it's a nice exercise to alternate left hand, right hand in the same physical space of the keyboard. All right, our last example here are our flashcards for the chords, okay? So they give you a video up top how to practice these, but we're just going to do these in prepare mode. All right, and I'll say what chord it is as I'm playing through it. Okay, so in this case, we've got C, E, and G, and C major. This is the 1 chord, so 1. All right, the next chord is the C, F, and A. That was the 4 chord. Now we've got B, F, and G. That was our 5/7. So it's going to rotate through these different chords in different orders. So 1, 5/7, 4, 5/7, 1, 1, 4, 5/7, 4, 1, 4, 1, 5, 7, 1, 5, 7, 1, 5, 7, 4, 1, 5, 7, 4, and that's the end of that exercise. Okay, so I hope you can see that the beauty of this system is that you're learning small little pieces of music theory as you're going through the lessons. The things they're introducing you to are in a very logical order, and then they're trying to apply them immediately to a piece of music that you should be able to play at the given level of the software. So by the time you've reached level 3, reading through and playing these pieces of music should be within your realm of possibility. It's not, they wouldn't throw you something quite like that in level 1 that's too advanced. Okay, so if you have questions on that, let me know in the chat here during the live stream, or if you have questions throughout the week, feel free to throw them on the comments here on YouTube. Okay, we're going to wrap up today's show with just playing through a couple more pieces just to utilize these concepts. Let's go into The Bear Went Over the Mountain. Let's take a look at that one. Okay, so we'll sight read this together. This one's in 6/8, which if you have trouble counting in 6/8, I always like to mention this. The challenge most people find when they're reading music or counting rhythm in particular is really not understanding the difference between simple meters, or meters that are the beat divides into 2, so like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, etc., where we're saying the word and to divide the beat, versus compound meters. So compound meters divide the beat into 3 pieces. So the counting system I like to use, we would count that 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 1 lolly, 2 lolly. So we're breaking up each 8th note with 1 la and li. So I'll count this one using that method. If you're interested, I do have a book on how to read music easily in 30 days where I go through all the details of counting systems like that. And you can check that out on my website, oneminutemusiclesson.com/book. But let's take a look at this example. The bear went over the mountain. We'll do it in prepare mode. 2 measures, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 lolly, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 lolly, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 li, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 li, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 li, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 lolly, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 lolly, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 lolly, 1, 2 li, 1 li, 2 li, 1, 2. Excellent. Okay, and let's move on. Just a couple more quick sight readings this morning. Let's look at On Top of Old Smoky. So it comes in 2 versions in Piano Marvel. They like to do this quite often to give you a preparatory piece to get ready to play it, and then the sort of complete piece. I'll show you an example of that. So the preparatory piece, in this case, they're showing us the chords in block form, meaning just all 3 notes are together. Okay, so if we were to read through this one, I'll do so quickly. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So what they're going to do after they've prepared you with the block chords is now they're going to take that same music and break apart the chords, so you have a more flowing accompaniment with that. Okay, so in this case, it's more of a waltz accompaniment, like so. So here we go. We'll read through this one. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Okay, they wrap out this method cabinet with a handful of more tunes that we haven't played. Maybe we'll wrap up with this one, which is Sweet Lullaby. And in 3/4 time. And here we've got, we're starting to arpeggiate or break apart the chords in spaced out in time or linearly, I guess you would say. So C, E, G in that first chord. Then we see our 5, 7 in measure 4, B, F, G. All right, and they'll throw in the 4 chord too, because this whole lesson is about 1, 4, and 5, 7. All right, so let's take a listen to that. So we've heard lots of examples that are outlining the 1, the 4, and the 5, 7, and we're seeing that in different textures, meaning different rhythmic presentations of that same chord. Okay. In prepare mode, hands on the keyboard, 2 measures, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, so it's a pretty nice tune there. And we're just reinforcing over and over, identifying the 1, the 4, and the 5, 7 chord throughout these examples. So if you continue on in Piano Marvel and you're looking at method cabinet level 3, there's a lot more that's going to be introduced throughout. And in your workbook or in your method book, you'll also see some examples where you can write some things in. I always like to have students, don't do everything digital. Do some things analog on paper. Think through the various music theory concepts just on paper so you have time to really think about what it is you're trying to figure out. Okay, so that's going to wrap us up for this lesson this morning. If you have questions, like I said, feel free to throw them in the comments here live on YouTube. Or you can always submit them to our mailbag that we have offline. So that's 1minutemusiclesson.com/mailbag. That's going to be it for today. As we continue on over the next couple weeks, we'll wrap out the rest of the levels of Piano Marvel. So we've gone through level 1, level 2, and this week level 3. Next week we'll be going into level 4. So just to give you a sneak preview of that, let's take a look at that method cabinet real quick. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about ledger lines, how to read those outside of the grand staff. We'll be talking a little bit more about 16th notes, how to count those and subdivide those. And then just a little bit more on note identification and maybe note agility. Okay, I see some comments rolling in here real quick. We'll address those. Just some comment, a compliment from David. Perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, great. Thanks. See you next week, David. Henry asks, when I do the flashcard exercises, the right notes are the right notes are hiding behind the dashboard menu. Do I have a problem with, and it kind of cuts off the rest of your comment, but I think what you're asking, Henry, and oh, my comments are gigantic up there. The thing you'll want to do, Henry, take a look here. When I'm looking at Piano Marvel in a web browser, because the product works in a web browser, the iPad, and you can also run it on your iPhone, which is really an awesome option. But what you'll want to do in your browser is just change the size of your the zoom in size. Depends on if you're Windows or a Mac, but I'll just demonstrate it for you real quick. If I was in that flashcard example, let me go back to it real quick for you. If I go into level 3 at the end, flashcard example, on a Macintosh, I use Control plus or Control minus, and it just changes the size of the window. But you can try just hitting Control or Command 0 just to set it back to its standard size. You've probably just zoomed in from some other web page causing that. Good question, Henry. Thanks for asking that. All right, so that's going to be it for today's show, and I will catch you next time. I always like to wrap up the show by saying thank you to our supporters. We have several supporters on Patreon, and our supporters on Patreon are really what helps us achieve our mission, which is to spread music literacy around the world. So thank you to our patrons. If you want to learn more about that, visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/support. There's lots of ways to support the show, not just financially. So we encourage you to do that. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for joining. And as always, I'm Leon Harrell. This is In Tune, and we'll see you next Saturday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, which is Chicago. All right, take care. Have a great week. See you next time. Bye-bye.